Alright, so the Vision Pro has been out for basically a year now, and now there's all the 1 year later reviews coming up. And even though I don't own the Vision Pro myself, I wanted to take a look again and see what it has accomplished so far in terms of successes, what the challenges are for the product right now, and what the future potential might hold for this product line, since this is like the first new major product introduction that Apple has done in quite a while. So it's really interesting to look at again after 1 year. So in terms of the success so far, of course, we don't get exact sales numbers from Apple, but there are some analyst numbers and they all kind of fall into the range between 250,000 and 500,000 for the first year. If you look at that from an Apple perspective, that's a really small number and seems like a very low volume. But if you just calculate that based on the price of like 3,500 to even close to 5K for the Vision Pro, depending on how you configure it with like add-ons and so on, you can still assume that Apple has made 1 to 2 billion in revenue from the Vision Pro. So I think just basically saying that based on the sales numbers alone, it is a failure, which a lot of news outlets have done, I think might be wrong, just because of course Apple is used to selling more of the products that are really successful for them, like especially the iPhone. But if you just look at it not from an Apple point of view, but in general, a 1 to 2 billion a year product is not a failure, I would say. But then I also looked at the Google Trends, and those paint kind of a more grim picture, because there's a really high interest spike when the Vision Pro came out initially at the beginning of last year. There wasn't really any more interest after that, and the curve is really flattened since then. And what I found even more interesting, because the Vision Pro was only announced in the US initially and then came to Europe sometime in the summer last year. But when I looked at the same data for Germany, I saw that even there, the interest spike was the highest for the US launch at the beginning of the year. There wasn't really more interest when it actually came to Germany. So that means that people are somewhat interested, but might not be interested in buying the Vision Pro right now. But what's even more interesting is if we compare those charts to other Apple product launches like the iPhone or Apple Watch. If we look at those, you see that the iPhone had a big spike, of course, also with the initial announcement, but then it spiked again for the next iPhone model, which was introduced like a year after. Same goes for the Apple Watch, and what's interesting with the Apple Watch as well is that it also had a big spike for the holidays, which means that probably it was considered as a gift really often. The Vision Pro didn't really have either of those because, of course, it doesn't have a successor yet, and also it probably isn't really a big holiday gift because, I mean, the price is just too high compared to the Apple Watch, which is kind of perfect for that. So then why are people not buying the Vision Pro if they're seemingly at least somewhat interested in it? I would say, to me, the challenges fall into 4 main categories. The first one is the price and product features. Second one is developer support and use cases. The third one is the AI distraction. And the last one is kind of the slow adoption mindset that people have around this type of technology. So let's go one by one. First one, price and product features. I would say the Vision Pro, of course, is just really high in terms of the price compared to other product launches. An Apple Watch you might buy just to try out if it's $300-400, but the Vision Pro is like 3 to 4K, which is more than most people probably have ever spent on any Apple product. And that's just really hard to swallow if you don't really know what you're going to use it for and kind of how valuable this type of technology will be in your life. I think also at this price point, people expect perfection, and the Vision Pro is far from perfect. I tried it once myself, which was a really interesting experience, and I've watched a lot of videos about it. And of course, it's a first-gen product. It has a lot of issues that it still has to figure out how to deal with. For example, the weight is really high, and it's really like struggling with long-term comfort if you want to wear it for multiple hours. The battery solution is not really ideal. The cameras can be really bad when you look at like dark rooms and have the pass-through on. It can be really noisy and so on. There's like a laundry list of issues with the Vision Pro, and I just don't think that the price matches the expectation. People want a perfect product for this type of price. The second key challenge for me is the developer support and use cases, and there I would say there's like a bunch of issues that go into this one. In terms of developer support, it just hasn't really been great. There's no YouTube app, for example, no Netflix app, which both should be there for like a major new Apple platform. But of course, Apple also has kind of a weird attitude around developers. They haven't really had the best relationships to all developers. That might mean that developers are not as willing to jump on a new platform as they have been in the past. I mean, there have been some news about Netflix and YouTube apps, But so far we don't have anything. We just have to treat it the way it is right now, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support from the bigger developers. And also the smaller developers. I mean, there could be way more apps that might help the Vision Pro figure out a great use case. And I mean, at least for the iPhone, it worked out great in the beginning to have new apps, so many new, like really big apps like Uber, Airbnb, all of those that came out in kind of the early years of the iPhone. And the Vision Pro right now doesn't really seem to have the ecosystem to support that type of innovation, which also then leads to a lack of use cases, because if we don't have enough apps, it will be hard to figure out what we're going to use the Vision Pro for. And I think that's kind of the biggest struggle for everyone that owns the Vision Pro right now. When I tried it out, it's really great for immersive content. Watching elephants right in front of you is something that you can't experience on any other platform. The problem with that is just that immersive content right now is really rare. There's not a lot of it. It's really expensive to make. Of course, Apple tries to push that, I think, but at least right now, there's not enough of this type of content available. And then the browsing, gaming, like virtual Mac display, those are all really cool features, but it's just not something that would make me want to buy this immediately, at least not from trying it out in the store. I thought all of them were really cool, like especially the Mac display. You can have like a really big ultra-wide display now with the Vision OS version 2. That's super cool, but it's just not something that you would use that regularly, because if you're at home, it's still way more comfortable to just use a monitor. So it's mostly useful on flights, traveling, stuff like that. The next challenge for me would be the distraction from AI. I mean, of course, Apple is a big company, but you have to imagine that Apple Intelligence has been a really big effort inside of Apple and has for sure taken away resources from other areas, because they were kind of forced to have an answer to AI last year. And right now they're still struggling to deliver on the promises that they made last year. So it seems like it's really hard for Apple to develop AI right now, and they need to stay in that race to stay a relevant tech company in 2025. So I would imagine that that has also taken away from some of the planned Vision Pro development that might have been there if it wasn't for this AI boom that we have right now. And the last challenge I would say is just that people have a slow adoption mindset around this technology right now. They seem to have more of a wait and see approach. I mean, everyone seems to have a high interest. The videos about Vision Pro get really high views usually, but nobody really wants to buy it right now, which I think is due to the fact that there's really no immediate feature or killer app or like really good use case that makes you want to run out and buy this right now, even though it's not perfect. With the iPhone and Apple Watch, there was always something that was kind of like, okay, I need to get an iPhone right now because there's just so much on this iPhone that I cannot get on my like brick phone, Nokia phone, what I had before. And this is just not the case with the Vision Pro. I think people just want to wait and see where it goes before they commit to this big of a purchase. And that makes sense, but that makes it hard for Apple to develop the ecosystem, because they need to have high numbers of users to kind of combat some of the other challenges like the developer support that's lacking. All right, but I don't think it's all bad. The Vision Pro is clearly a really impressive product, and there's a lot of opportunities for it. I would say they fall mainly into 4 categories. The first one would be the iterations on the current product. Second one would be cheaper versions of the current product. Third one is the competition that has been coming out from Google and Samsung recently. And the fourth opportunity would be that they could just use this technology on AR glasses. So let's jump into them. First one, iterations on the current product. I mean, right now the Vision Pro has an M2 chip compared to the Max, which have an M4 chip already and will probably jump on M5s this year sometime. So it's just a little bit behind on the hardware, which is really sad for such an innovative and new product. So I think it might make sense to just update the Vision Pro maybe this or next year, according to the rumors, is when this is going to happen. And apparently it will have an M5 chip. It could also maybe have some other new features, and that would be really interesting because, as we saw with the Apple Watch and iPhone launches, new iterations on first generation products always spark a lot more interest again. The next one would be, of course, developing a cheaper model, and there have been a lot of rumors about this, maybe also because Apple is experimenting with this internally, but apparently it's just going to have a little bit lower resolution displays. It would also lose the eyesight feature, so this is like the seeing your eyes in a like AI generated version on the outside. And some other of the like really expensive premium features would be gone as well. But I think this would be a really great opportunity to expand the user base. Probably get this in like somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000. That would make it really attractive to a lot more people, I think, while keeping most of the impressive stuff like the immersive content would still look great, and all of like the Apple experience in the Vision OS operating system. All of that would still be great. You would just lose some of the really premium features, and that would be a great opportunity to come out with such a cheaper version, just to really expand the user base, make it more attractive to app developers. And then also the competition from Samsung and Google. I mean, they showed their version of a Vision Pro basically a couple of weeks ago. It looks very much inspired by the Vision Pro, but competition is always good for a new product category because it will help bring more apps to the platform. They will have a more open approach, so it will be more attractive to developers, and that might help just increase consumer awareness around this category in general, then also just come up with more innovative use cases for this type of technology. And I think all of those could help Apple, even though it's competition. I think competition always helps everyone in the market most of the time. And then last but not least, of course, this technology that the Vision Pro has right now could really easily be used to make AR glasses in the future. Apparently, this was also the plan that Apple had in the beginning. It was just not possible to make with current technology. But I think this is really interesting because if you look at the Vision Pro, by default, it shows you the world around you through its cameras. And of course, it would be a lot cooler if you could just actually look at the world around you and it could just project the windows kind of inside of your view. I know this is probably still a long way off, but the Vision Pro might still have a lot of potential just as like a stepping stone, helping to develop the platform for future AR glasses. If they can make it happen, that would be great. But of course, this is more of a long-term thing and still pretty far off probably. So I think it's just a little bit too early to judge the Vision Pro's success right now, and it's too early to call it a failure. I would say that the sales are really impressive. Of course, they're not high by Apple's standards, but if you just look at them in general, not from Apple's perspective, they're really impressive for a new product. And if we look at the history, it can sometimes take a couple of generations for Apple to really find the right niche for a product. For example, the Apple Watch initially was more of a fashion accessory and really focused on that, even with like the gold version that was like almost $20,000, I think. And now it's more of a health and wellness focused device. So sometimes it might just take a couple of generations, and I think it's more exciting to see where this goes and not judge the success by the first generation of it. I think the combination of the really high price, the lack of developer support, and also missing one clear killer app is really hurting the Vision Pro right now and making it hard for it to succeed. But I think all of those could be dealt with in the future through some of the potentials that the Vision Pro has currently, especially through a cheaper model. I think that would be like the easiest way in the short term to help out the Vision Pro, because it would increase the user base, it would make it a lot more attractive to developers, and I think also it would lead a lot more people to try it out. If they can get like 98% of the Vision Pro experience into something that's like 50% of the cost, of course, then a lot more people would find that attractive. So yeah, I was really impressed by the demo I had last year, but I wasn't really jumping to buy it because it was just way too expensive for what I felt it could do for me. But I think even though a lot of people are struggling to find use cases right now, and not a lot has changed since my demo in the last summer, which is kind of sad, it's a really interesting category, and the more we can develop this category, I think the more it can turn into something that will be really mainstream, especially once, of course, it's available as AR glasses. But I think even a cheaper version of the Vision Pro could already be like a really high-selling product compared to what the Vision Pro does right now. So yeah, I'm not really ready to buy the Vision Pro right now, and I'm also probably not going to buy the Vision Pro 2 when it comes out, but I will be watching it, and I'm really interested to see where this category goes. Let me know your experience with the Vision Pro if you've tried it out or even own one, and see you next week.